Great defeaters, new and old. Welcome back to another episode of The Breakdown with your host, BaseDaKID. Yeah, Tony will be in the building at some point. Untraceable, you was right. Someone was late, and as always, it's very, very rarely me. That being said, thank you very much, everyone who is tuning in. I'm gonna do the roll call in a few moments, but yeah, I hope everyone's good. Let me know how the sound is. Make sure that my sound's all good and all clear. I'm in a different location today. I'm deciding just to try different spots out, see where I feel most comfortable. I think this might have to be a setting moving forward. I can't lie, but yeah. Look, we had the weekend was a pretty low key weekend of action in terms of just the fights. There was nothing overly exciting or dramatic that people were getting ready for, but it ended up being oh, Clyde sounds a bit worried. That might be slight echo in from the room. Obviously it's a fairly big room, so yeah, apologies for that. If it's that bad, just let me know and I'll get my headphones, and hopefully that should help. But yeah, um, yeah. Look, decent weekend of action. Some good stuff to go through. Um, I'm trying to. I'm only really. There's only two fights from the Queensberry card I necessarily want to talk about, and then there's maybe three fights from the top rank card. So we will wait and see where Tony kind of wants to go with things. But yeah, um, in fact, while I'm waiting for, I'm gonna start with the chat. So shout out to everyone in the building. Let's do the roll call, and then we'll get to some of the funny comments. So Untraceable first in the building. Shout out to you. Philip Ansell's number two. As always, Philip is ever present. He's a true stable of every one of the channels that I hold near and dear. So shout out to Philip. Northbank Bren in the building. Salute to you. Mulla Mulla in the building as well. And as you guys saw, Untraceable said, one of them will be late. And then it was probably Tony. S in the building. Shout out to you, Ellis Palmer as well. Star Fox WR45E, Dan the man, SC15, hardest working guy on Twitex. Shout out to you, Clyde Gordon in the building as well. Fight Fan TV Live, Danny Glover himself in the building. Salute. We appreciate it. Yes, echo, not bad, still clear though. Okay, cool. And shout out to G Chain in the building as well. Hopefully by the time Tony comes in, the echo may sort of subside a little bit. I won't speak as much. And yeah, if I need to, I'll get my headphones. So we'll see. But we seem to be okay for the time being. Oh, it looks like Tony's just joined. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. So you guys can all admonish him in the chat.
You won't believe, I just fell asleep. I literally just fell asleep.
Old age.
Yeah, that can be said. Yeah, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies for my old agedness. It's funny because in the chat is my good friend Clyde Gordon, who I went to school with since the age of 11. We're both the same age. And interestingly, we were having a conversation today because Clyde's an athletic coach, and he coaches a man who competes 100, 200 hurdles and high jump, I think. And he's 85 years old, and he's currently in the World Championships in Sweden. And I'm like, it's just, it has been a mind blower for me today. Clyde, you've blown my mind. I can't believe it. So yeah, but hi, how you doing, Base? Anyway.
Oh well, oh well. People have been greeted like it was a decent weekend. I ate some nice food over the weekend, christenings, family functions, just relaxing, gym, the usual stuff. No real complaints. Yourself? I mean, I'm sure you must be happy that the league's back on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird situation because, I'm glad to see Premier League football back. But I absolutely hate that the transfer window is still open. I think it's absolutely ludicrous. They need to change it so the season starts after the window closes. Let people do their business and then force them to have done your business before the season starts. Because now we've got another 10 days and it's like, oh, everyone's asking who's going to win the league. Well, we don't know because we don't know where players are going to be. I mean, there's no doubt the way Chelsea are buying players, they could win the league because they're about, 3 players short of being absolutely right up there. And by the looks of it, they ain't holding back on who they're going for. But I digress because
Well,
it's a
all I'll say
boxing
to
show.
that, Tony, is don't forget back in the day when there was no close to the transfer window. You could do transfers any time in the season.
I preferred it that way. I absolutely preferred it that
But
way.
why would you prefer it that way if you could still buy people at any point in the season? Like that's no good. I prefer when there's some little intrigue here. There's stuff to keep you suspect. Oh, is he gonna stay? Is he gonna go? And then
Untraceable, you're being disingenuous with your answer there. What do you mean Arsenal don't do rubbish? Anyway, let's see if your team's ever done a double.
Right. Okay, so I was talking to the people in the chat. So as we usually do, we have big fight first, then everything else, and then big fight to end. So I feel like the only place to start has to be with my South London compatriot, Mr. Denzel Too Sharp Bentley. So with that being said, Tony, let's tell the people how you thought he did against Derek Asazi in the time that fight took place.
Well, I mean, you don't get to really see too much about a player when he does perform so admirably, so quickly. I mean, essentially, Asazi came out. He looked like he wanted to bring some offense to Denzel. What I noticed immediately was he was being very aggressive with his overhand right, which Denzel just seemed to see from a mile away. And as a result, when he was throwing that overhand right, it was landing in midair. And that for me was a bad start because it meant for me that looking at the small amount of footwork required to get himself out of that haymaker position of being hit, Denzel was able to read and work out exactly what he needed to do in order to get the better of Derek Asazi. Now, I believe they've sparred together, they know each other, and that might be part of the reason why Asazi sort of came with something different and tried to maybe utilize a pressurizing style in order to try and gain respect in this particular outing. But unfortunately, as you can see, Denzel was able to read exactly what he was doing, and he was able to shoot in between the punches of Asazi. As you can see there, Asazi is caught in no man's land. His hands are literally wide open, and he gets caught with the most beautiful uppercut. And then the two shots that come after, very, they don't even really hit. And, last week we were talking about potential knockout of the year. Here we go again, another potential knockout of the year. And as the caption says, if Hamza wants a big fight, bring it. There were a couple of names brought into the fray after the fight, Hamza Sharif being one of them. I believe Brad Pauls is also being talked about, if not the rematch with Nathan Heaney. But as far as the performance of Denzel is concerned, a masterful performance. As I said, he was totally in control. He didn't have to use a lot of footwork to get himself out of range. But what he did with his feet was very important because it allowed him to roll and move away from shots without being completely away from the action. And when he needed to, he was able to offload his own shots and touch and hurt Asazi, without having to coming from distance. So great performance from Denzel, great distance control, which is something you know I'm all about. Over to you, Base.
One thing that surprised me about this fight, because I predicted that Denzel would win. I think most people did. But I thought he would go points. Reason being, every fight that I've seen of Derek Asaze previously, he's not this really aggressive, come forward fighter. He's very kind of fluid. He's got very good sort of punch selection, decent movement, and everything sort of. He has a certain rhythm to him. But there's a lot of movement. There's angles. There's a lot of boxing. In this fight, he's like he decided, okay, people either think I can't punch or people think that he's going to try and bully me around the ring or he's got power. So the only way I can take away his power is by proving that I can hang or proving that I can bang with the best of them. And that whole tactic, from I saw the way he was throwing shots from round one, don't get me wrong, he won round one quite well off of the off of the movement and sort of the quickness of the punches as well. But just wasn't enough torque on them. And ultimately it was that problem of not being able to, generate power that's gonna keep, Denzel honest, keep him wary. He didn't really have much to kind of impose on him at that point. And one thing I've noticed about Denzel, especially in his in the last few fights, is he likes boxing off the back foot. He likes being almost being that counter puncher, being the defender and then sneaking a shot with timing. He struggles when he has to be the person coming forward and being aggressive and trying to create the action, because that's not really him. He likes to sort of sit back, wait for you to almost make a mistake and then bang. And Asazi gave him every single opportunity, even the point where he had Denzel on the ropes, just taking shots. They thought, oh, Denzel's almost come under the cosh a little bit here. No, Denzel was calm on those ropes. I think he was quite happy that happened, because it just gave Asazi a full sense of security. So when the setups came afterwards, Asazi didn't see them coming because he wasn't reading what Denzel was doing. He was focused on the fact that he was having such success. And as you said, we talk about the knockout. I mean, he was out on his feet before any of the secondary and the tertiary punches connected, and even they barely connected. One of them grazed, and then the other two sort of just flew over the head. The uppercut, it was pitch perfect. It was punch perfect. The placement it's probably the best thrown uppercut he's ever thrown in his career. Maybe the best uppercut he'll ever throw in his career. Everything just aligned. And Denzel has shown that, look, blips or not, he's definitely above this level. I don't know what level we can class Asazi at. If he's British, if he's English, is he in between? Is he fringe European? I don't know. But Denzel's shown that he's a level above that. Maybe he might want to run it back with Heaney just to get that win back. He has obviously spoken of Johnny Beck, saying that he'd like to get that one back. The Hamza Shiraz thing, that fight was spoken about for a while. And as he said, if he wants big fights, he's there. But yeah, interesting. But that being said, can't really take too much from it. It was a 2-round job, but masterfully done. So shout out to Too Sharp. And on to the next. I want him to be out again very soon. He had 2 rounds of action. There's no reason to be out 4 or 5 months. Like, you should be back out again by like October. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Cool. So we'll go to the next fight on the bill.
Yeah, Alois Jr. versus, what's his name? Baradi. What's Baradi's first name?
Orosco. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, Orosco Baradi. Now this fight, um, I knew that it would be difficult for Alois Jr. at the start, and it's weird because I was looking at the actual fight itself, and I said that he's going to have issues with movement, and Berardi's going to basically try to throw shots that are just going to sort of chip away, because you know, Alois has never been past the fourth round before. So I figured he's going to try box and move, chip away at him and try to take it into the later stages, which to a degree he did. And there was many times where he actually did have some success, especially after the fourth round, because those were rounds that Alois hadn't had before. And as you guys can see, in sort of in this flurry, that was one of the few flurries where, even though, you know, Alois was tucked up behind the jab, like he came under the cosh, he was tired at that point. Um, as much as he's got, you know, real strong, real big punch power, it's quite clear that in terms of just the actual ability, it's lacking at the moment. That's not to say that he can't improve, but maybe the quick turnover from the amateurs wasn't the smartest of moves, especially considering that he's not. If he was fighting the way that maybe Tyson was fighting back in the 90s, like every couple of weeks or every month, every month and a half, then you might say, okay, you get that training on the road. But I don't feel like he's fighting regularly enough to get the necessary seasoning that he's gonna need to, you know, get to, or to unlock the level of talent that he probably believes that he has. And that's not to say that I don't think he's got it. It's just I feel like he needs to be in there fighting with more varied people a lot more often, to get, you know, just to sort of get that sharpness. And turning over pro as quickly as he did may end up being sort of the, you know, like the one barrier in his career. I mean, he won the fight fairly comfortably, fairly convincing. I will say the one thing, and I can't tell anyone how to celebrate their wins or mourn their losses or whatever, but you know, the level of jubilation he had, like winning, what is it, like an IBO international belt or something like that. I get it's like, oh, it's the first belt you've ever won or whatever, but if you believe that you're above this level, you shouldn't be on the floor crying, winning, you know, a trinket title that ultimately means nothing. Um, like, this is supposed to be routine for you. You're supposed to be treating this like, oh well, why would I get upset? Why would I get excited about something that I'm supposed to be doing? That's sort of the one criticism I have of that. He's going to have to obviously learn also to cut off the ring a bit better. He's a bit ploddy on his feet, which obviously he's got so much power. He wants to be flat-footed to generate that power. But he's going to have to, if he's going to be flat-footed, then he's going to have to, yeah, he's going to have to learn to cut off the ring so he can plant his feet down properly. But other than that, it was a competent performance. Berardi also came game, especially in the first half of the fight. So it was a spirited effort, good learning. Just hopefully he gets yeah, just like I said, hopefully he can sort of get more seasoning and get more fighters of that kind of level that can take him rounds at least, because I think the rounds is definitely what is going to benefit him the most. What did you think, Tony?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too far off what you said. In all honesty, Base, I felt like, you know, look, this is a learning curve for Alois. You know, it was a good test. Aradi came, and you know, he brought the fighting spirit, the Italian fighting spirit. Although he's listed as German, he's born in Italy. Obviously, the Italian name. But he brought some spirit and some fight into this particular encounter. And Alois didn't have it all his own way, but you know, he has a lot to learn. He can go away from this and he can learn a lot. I mean, you know, it's just way too early for him to be being braggadocious. I mean, you say that he's had far less fights than Ben Whittaker, but obviously he hasn't looked anywhere near as good as Ben Whittaker. But yeah, I'm definitely not in the, oh, he's the next best thing. No, because there's a lot of great cruiserweights right now. And, you know, just in London, let alone outside and on the international scene. So he's got, you know, a hard job getting himself up into the upper echelons of champions in amongst the UK contingent of cruiserweights. So, you know, go away, look at the fight film, try and learn, see where you can improve. But he's young enough. He seems hungry enough. So we'll just give him the time to develop and see how he gets on. But yeah, I'm not going overboard on this one. Good performance, nothing great. You know, he got through adversity and he was able to get the W, which is the most important thing.
Okay. All right. Now let's do the honors for Mr. G Chain, as I did see his comment from earlier, and it's funny enough, it was gonna be something I spoke about, maybe not in the length that he wanted, but we do have to speak about Abdullah Mason and his fight. I think it was against Mark. I think his name's Mark Khan, or Mark O'Hain, something like that.
Sorry, before we go across to the top rank card,
Okay.
you did mention Ben Fell. Do you want to just have a quick mention of him?
Not particularly. All I will basically say is that I didn't see the whole 6 rounds, but I saw the last 2 rounds of it, and it looked like he made hard work of the last part of the fight. But from what I've heard, he did well at the start. And obviously he got a knockdown, I think, in the first or the second round, which basically secured the victory for him. But yeah, hard night's work. Maybe that's what he needs, but I can't remember the record of the guy. But maybe Ben isn't as far along as they were thinking he could potentially be. Maybe it was the heat of York Hall, as I did hear that York Hall was mad hot, as probably not as hot as it was that fateful night last year when Fraser Clark faced Marius Vac. But yeah, pretty much it. That's Ben did okay, but there's still a lot more to go.
Yeah. So he was facing Omir Rodriguez, who had a record of 15 wins, 19 defeats, and 1 draw. He had lost 5 of his previous 6 fights. So this guy was clearly journeyman ratings. The 6-0 Ben failed to get the finish, although he did knock down Rodriguez, as you saw. But it was, you know, a case of he didn't need to get involved in that street fight. You know, what ended up being a tear up. You know, he had size and length, and he, you know, for me, when you mentioned him in your prelim before the fight, the Base's picks, I thought, oh, I remember Base talking about Ben, so I might have a look and see what he's going to be all about. And I was a little bit disappointed because I felt, seeing what he brought, that he unnecessarily went into a war which he didn't need to. He was there to just box and move. And I think if he'd have boxed more intelligently, he probably stops that guy. But that's...
I hear you. No, yeah, no more really to look, you guys, stop it. I tried to move past it. Stop typing in the chat. Yo, so
size and length are very important, G-Chain.
He shouldn't have acknowledged it, Tony. Yeah, look, Abdullah Mason. Let's move straight over to the wonder kid named Abdullah. What is he now? 20 years old, 21, very, very young, 15-0 with 13 KOs. Vicious just a very vicious body puncher, vicious heads, uppercuts. He knows how to cut off the ring, southpaw stance, beautifully posed. Like his construct is top notch for such a young kid. All he does is train. All he does is live and breathe boxing. From what I've heard, yes, he's not facing the best of opponents as of yet, but he is taking those incremental step ups, which is what you need to do. And while I actually believe that he could, there's several there's several former world champions or people at that fringe world level that he could take out now. I understand why they don't want to put him up there just yet, because once you go up, you can't come back down to a lower level to get that learning in. So you've got to sort of just stick here for maybe another 1, 2, or 3, just to sort of get the get that momentum. But is active. He fights every 2 to 3 months, which is the perfect level, especially at when he's doing now the 8-rounders. Hopefully, he can parlay and stay with that level of activity, 3 to 4 fights a year, at least up until the point where he becomes a world champion, if he gets that far. But just everything about the kid is impressive, and the fact that he's never afraid to sit in the pocket. In fact, he seems to love it in the pocket. He loves being able to make someone miss, slip, ride, roll, even sometimes take a bit of a shot, calculated risk to make sure that he gets his own work off. Abdullah Mason, he is the next one up. There's a few times where I thought someone's going to be the goods, and then they've ended up becoming a bit flat. I don't see that being him. I do see him being a problem at 135, and then eventually at 140, he might even be able to go to 147. He's got a bit of a small frame, so maybe 140 might be his max. But yeah, Abdullah Mason is the truth. As they used to call Brock Lesnar, he's the next big thing, and I'm quite settled on that assessment. Tony, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, again, just reiterate what you said. He is, in my opinion, one of the brightest stars in the game of boxing right now. 15-0, 13 KOs at the age of 20. Very impressive. And it's the way in which he's beating people. He's beating them with very accomplished boxing skills. You mentioned he's a southpaw. His distance control is excellent. He has excellent footwork, good range of punching. But, I'm just being a bit cautious. He could be the next great thing. I think 3 or 4 years ago, what I think about Abdullah Mason is probably what I thought about Devin Haney. And it's not unnoticed that they're both fighting the same division as they started. I mean, obviously Devin is now moved up, but to me, that lightweight division is one of the greatest divisions in terms of talent. There's, as far back as I can remember, a certain somebody who's getting pointed at started his career as a lightweight. It's a long time since I've been that weight, but yeah, lightweight was the division. The guy that basically stopped me from becoming a pro in my gym, the great Michael Shaka Ayers, if he hadn't been in front of me, I probably would have turned pro. But he was so good, 2 times ABA champions, eventually IBO world champion, and was just an unbelievable fighter. And because I fought at lightweight, I know all the greats in that division during my time, because what I used to look up to by way of world champions were greats. And so, look, everyone knows the welterweight division was great back in the day with Benitez, then Leonard and Hearns. But trust me, lightweight was the place to be. That's where the real greats were, and Abdullah, certainly can become one of those greats. He has the ability in a year or so to absolutely be able to dominate that division. Now, there's a couple of other guys there right now still, calling it you know, their division. You know, somebody in that division wants to be the face of boxing, but he ain't gonna stay there forever. And so it's the likes of Abdullah, who in a year or so, as I said, will probably be looking to be the dominant force in the division, and I believe he can be. So yeah, thank you for your comments, G Chain.
He wants to know who you'd like him to face in his next 3 fights to get him ready for world level if he's not there already.
I don't want him to be ready because there's absolute elite killers in that division. I honestly think he needs to go through, you know, the right sort of channels in terms of, you know, maybe a top 10 fight by the 3rd fight, which would be in 2025. But right now, you know, I wouldn't be overmatching him too much.
I could tell you who I'd put him in there with for his next 3 fights.
Go for it.
So the first one, I would pull someone up from 130. Probably, if I was thinking out loud, I reckon someone like what's the best? All right, forget the first one for a moment because his name's gone out of my head. The second fight,
I don't think you should be bringing people up. I just don't. I don't like it at world championship.
No, but you know,
level.
you bring someone up, but you bring up like one of the credible people, from someone like a Miguel Bichel. Actually, no, there you go. First one, because Bichel is obviously like he was the guy, but he's quite faded now. So someone like Miguel Bichel as the first fight. If he gets through that, Maxi Hughes, second fight. Because that's going to show, can you cut off the ring correctly? Can you box with the boxer? Can you fight the boxer? Can you stay in character with someone that's a tricky operator in and around you? That's who I would have as a second fight. And then the third fight, if he still is around at that point, by this point, he should be at close to world level, if not there. You give him George Kambosos. If he goes through that run of fights, then you get him to face Keyshawn, you get him to face Andy Cruz, you get him to face William Zepeda, you get him to face.
Has Kambosos not gone up?
No, he's still at 135 at the minute.
Okay.
There's potential that he may go to 140 to face Liam Paro on the Australia card for the zone, but he hasn't stated that he's gone up yet. And you never know. Maybe by that time, Abdullah might go up. Maybe he might feel that 135 is starting to become a bit of a stretch. But that's what I would give him. I'd give him, like I said, someone like a Miguel Bichel now, who's obviously a bit faded, but from a lower weight, and you can gain some valuable experience there. Maxi Hughes, then George Kambosos. If you go through those names, like I said, then you start mixing it with everyone else in the division. William Zepeda, you give him. You got Shakur if he sticks around there. You've got Berenchek. You know, you've got Tank at some point. You've got Keyshawn Davis, Andy Cruz, and you know, even Mark Chamberlain. You know, if he wants to get in the mix, I'm sure that by that point, His Excellency Mr. Turki Al-Sheikh will be saying, "Okay, well, it's time for you to get to that level or not." And we'll wait and see.
I noticed on BoxRec that ranked literally 1, 2, 3, 4 places above Abdullah is Sam Noakes.
Yeah, he won't face Sam Noakes or Sean Noakes.
Frank Martin is a couple of places above that. Edwin De Los Santos.
No, keep him away from De Los Santos for now.
Yeah.
Not because De Los Santos is a better fighter, but De Los Santos has got the experience and he hits too hard. That's not to say that he can't take a punch, but that's not really a fight you need. It would make more sense for him to face Frank Martin.
I would keep him clear of Andy Cruz because I also feel very highly. I think the ceiling for Andy Cruz is extremely high.
Maybe, but that, like I said, that for me is a fight that you would have 4 or 5 fights down the line. You wouldn't do that now. But yeah, that's sort of my trajectory to answer G Chain's question. Also, just before we go on to the other cards, there a few other people did jump in to the chat. So two C's and a was. Shout out to you. Alloys from Penge representing, very explosive, very talented. He will be a problem for all British level cruisers in one or two more fights. All right, salute to you. I saw Karma Serene in the building. Shout out to you, Karma. I also saw, I'm pretty sure, yep, Yasmin Malik in the building. Shout out to you, Yasmin. See if there's any others that stepped in. Oh, Batista Diablo, salute. And Jam Down 187. Manners and respect each and every time to you, sir. So yes, that's sort of thoughts on there. Anything else you want to state about that?
Well, as a comment literally just came in that Clyde just came up with, and it's something I could immediately address because he said that what's my thoughts on Boxer cutting out the WBA, but I believe they put it back in now. So Turkey Al Sheikh has had a conversation, and from what I'm led to believe, the WBA are back in.
Okay, I mean that's good news because you need to be able to verify previous history and records. If you're going to be the authority, then be the authority. So yeah, that's good if that's the case. I guess you double check the website and see if that's happened. But yeah, so outside of that, I didn't. Now I'm a bit bugged because I didn't get a chance to see Osleys Iglesias. I haven't watched the fight against Senna Egbeko. I predicted he'd get the job done in about 5 rounds, 6 rounds. He actually did it in 2, same as David Morrell did. So Egbeko was either shot, faded, or Iglesias is basically the, he's that next guy up at 168. He's not. I don't think he's quite as good as Morrell, but I think he does hit. I reckon he probably hits harder, like per capita. And I feel like he's a lot more. Their styles are different. Morrell is almost, even though he likes to be sort of planted, and he'll sort of move side to side, lateral movement to try and find the angles. Iglesias is more of a guy that will almost try to tuck up, make you throw, and then counter your shot on the front foot, which is a pretty good skill set to have when it works. You can see from his nose, if you look at his box rip picture, that it hasn't always worked. But with that being said, what is he now? He's 12-0 with 11 KOs, or is he 11-0 with 10 KOs? It's one or the other. No, I think it's 12. It's 12-0 with 11 KOs. So he's he's one, I guess, to keep an eye out for. He will be in fun fights. Just don't know where the ceiling is. Any thoughts on that one?
No, I didn't see much of it. I mean, 2 rounds. I didn't, couldn't take too much from it. Kind of felt like, look, Senna Egbeko came in. He looked like a tank. I mean, the musculature just told me, hang on a second, this guy looks like a weights man. Very, very strong musculature. But that's not unusual for Ghanaians. I remember, some other tough-looking Ghanaian boxers. Many of them came through my gym because my gym was, run by a Ghanaian and Mr. Isola Ake. It was a case of a kind of ploddy-looking strongman against a more fluid-looking Cuban. And the Cuban just did what he needed to do in terms of moving around a guy who was, not as as good. He left himself wide open with that shot. It was bouncing and throwing a shot, and didn't have his feet set. And Iglesias just took advantage of his, his angles and was able to drop him. But I'm again, not going overboard on this guy. I think he's got a very long way to go before we can start talking to him about the likes of David Morrell and David Benavides, etc.
All right, look, next one up. Let's talk about Arslanbek Makhmudov, the Lion versus the Gladiator, Guido Vianello. Tony, give us your
Wow.
thoughts.
Wow. I mean, talk about a fall from grace. This was a guy that was being touted as one of the elite heavyweights a couple of years ago, or even less than that, less than a year ago, before the Caballero fight. 6'6" against 6'6", 260 pounds against 245. Slight reach advantage from the elusive Vianello. But look, this was a proper beatdown. There's no if, buts, or maybes about this. This was a proper beatdown. There was a knockdown that the referee didn't see for some mad reason. He's in the right place to see that. Both gloves touched down, as you can see. But, the hands are all over the place for Makhmudov. But what, you kind of read this fight exactly right, based in your pre-fight prediction. The movement of Vianello was just simply too much for Makhmudov, because Vianello knew, I can't stand in front of this guy. He had read everything that you had said, and he was able to use his good movement, which you were able to mention that he had, and basically pot shot, go in and out, as you can see here. He doesn't go too far in. He doesn't fall into his punches. He's a very much on his toes kind of fighter. Uses a good jab, and he was in and out, and effectively he just kept finding a home for that right hand, which ended up, as you can see, the eye of Makhmudov, just got worse and worse and worse and worse, until eventually, after 3 times going to see the referee and the doctor said, no, he can't carry on. But essentially, Makhmudov has no movement. His defense is porous, and he has literally no ability to change the impetus of a fight by moving around, by creating some angles or whatever. He's literally a one-dimensional fighter who has no no speed, no lateral movement. He stands straight up, and Guido literally was able to hit him at will and cause that significant damage, as you can see.
Okay. Well, yeah, look, as I said, I know some people are acting like, oh, now Guido could be in the mix with the other heavyweights. He gets anyone halfway decent takes him out. But as I had said previously, in this fight, the one thing he does have is he has decent footwork. He's got decent movement. He's quick. And all of that, to me, I knew that would just be the Achilles heel for Makhmudov, who, is okay when you've got someone that's being aggressive, but trying to sort of stay at the peripherals, where he has the moment to be able to sort of set himself and then swing the shot. But for someone that's going to be able to dart in and out, good footwork with a jab and sort of a wingspan and a arm length that's longer than yours for the most part, that was always going to be a problem. And unless Makhmudov was quick enough on his feet to be able to close the distance, he was never really gonna. He was always going to just be hoping for one big shot, and I kind of knew that was the situation. And for Vianello, I knew he had a decent chin, so even if he did get caught, he'd probably be able to take the shot. So yeah, but I did predict. I thought it would go points, though. I thought he would, and I thought he'd get a split decision, especially with it being in Quebec. I thought that Makhmudov would get extra consideration from the judges, as has been seen at times. But yeah, Guido pretty much didn't allow them the opportunity to say that he even won a round. at maybe best, you might say that the first round was the most competitive one. Outside of that, Vianello just basically had his, he basically just had his way in that fight. And like I say, it's to the point where Makhmudov made Vianello look like he could be a top 10 contender, and that's not the case. He doesn't have that kind of ceiling, and I'm going to stick by that, even despite the performance. It was a great performance from him, probably one of his best. But even with that being said, yeah, he was almost flattered to deceive, but it's also just as how bad Makhmudov was, and ultimately how far from grace he's fallen. This is Joe Joyce all over again. And at this point, I can't lie, I kind of want to see them two fight. Because, yeah, I mean, look, you've got one guy who hits extremely hard versus a guy that does he still have the chin, but one's going to have the work rate and the other one's going to just be looking for the single shots. Why not? If, two, and at least that way, Joe just ain't got to chase no one because he's going to be right in front of him. He might be the faster guy in the ring for once. So we'll see. That's kind of what I'd like to see. But yeah, that's sort of my thoughts on it. If there's nothing else, I saw Philip said, I think Guido, if he was to fight Johnny Fisher, I wouldn't be surprised if he beat him. Do you mean you wouldn't be surprised if Johnny Fisher beat him, or you wouldn't be surprised if Guido beat Johnny? And he also says, I wasn't surprised with another one after seeing him in the Ajagba fight. I knew it was going to be a tough fight for Makhmudov. Yeah. So, with that being said, let's move on to the main event, Tony.
Yeah, let's do that. Thought for a second you were going to forget the main event.
No, go for it.
Okay. So, where we at? Christian Mbili, the French Canadian, fighting out of Montreal against Sergey Derevyanchenko, the Ukrainian. This was an interesting card because to me, I kind of felt like, they made a big thing of it, but it was a 10-rounder. It wasn't like it was a big title. The unbeaten Mbili most recently KO'd Mark Heffron. As you can see, the record of Derevyanchenko, he's lost quite a lot of fights recently, but they've every single one, been against really high-level opposition. So what did we see? We saw a bit of a barn burner. Derevyanchenko, in his usual inimitable self, was there to bring the fight to Mbili. Mbili, he's no pretty boxer. He doesn't do anything slick. He's going to stand in front of you and he's going to put himself in a position to hit you with bombs all night. He is a little mini Mike Tyson in that, he tries to position himself to be able to throw his punches with bad intentions all the time. He doesn't want to throw any soft punches. He wants to throw hard to the stomach, and he mixes it. Hooks to the body, hooks to the head, uppercuts through the middle, combinations of 3 and 4 punches. But there's very little, how can I put it? Sort of cuteness or setting up of stuff. He doesn't set anything up nicely with, movement or jabs. You see some fighters will, come round the side of an opponent, hit, tap, move round to the other side as they create an opportunity. And Billy will just stand in front of you and literally just fire away till he gets through with his punches. And he doesn't mind if he's hitting you on the arms. He doesn't mind if he's hitting you on the gloves. The point is, he's hitting so hard that even if he's hitting you on the arm, even if he's hitting you on the glove is hitting yourself back in return, and the arm is going to start hurting at some point in time. So he's a very strong puncher. But Devryanchenko has shown he's a tough kid himself. And on this occasion, this was the ultimate in tough man boxing because Devryanchenko, I'm not sure what round the injury happened to his right arm, to his left arm, sorry. But he basically tore his bicep and he was having to fight with one hand. And you know what? Even though he was fighting with one hand, he was very effective. And in some rounds, he was winning rounds with one hand. You know, he was literally from the orthodox position as well. It's not like he turned southpaw, and you know, he did eventually at some point turn southpaw, but he didn't do it for the majority of the time. He continued to fight from the orthodox stance and just continued to fire the right hand, uppercuts, right hooks, right up, straight rights. And because he was able to throw them with power and speed, he was able to put Mbili off his own game. And it seemed strange to me that the Mbili corner was unable to find a style which would be able to take advantage of a fighter you have with one hand. You know, literally, I'm listening, I'm listening, but it's all in French. But, you know, you're kind of thinking, are you going to instruct him to do something where he can take advantage of a guy who's got one arm and it's his backhand? And they didn't seem to have any strategy. He just came out and kept doing the same thing over and over again. And as I said, there were rounds he didn't win where Devryanchenko was throwing the right hand consistently over and over at him. And in fact, not only was he throwing it with no left hand to counter, but he was throwing it with great accuracy. He was able to connect on a regular basis. And that to me showed an inability to adapt to a fighter in fight. There was inability from Mbili to change the game, to do something different, to take advantage of a depleted fighter, you know. So yeah, the tough guy, Sergey, he was there. Looked like the referee might have pulled him out at the end of the ninth, or what was the start of the 10th, because he let the corner do the work on him and see what he could do. And then, like, literally, it was a case of, you know, look, we'll let you get through the last round. And he, you know, he was able to see the bell ring. But to his credit, Mbili banked enough rounds to win the decision. But there were questions being asked after that performance. Base, over to you.
It's funny you say that he was winning rounds because the judges didn't seem to think so. I think they only gave him one round in the fight, which to me was kind of crazy. I thought he won 3 of the rounds, which I feel, and considering that the first round he won was the round just after he tore his bicep, yeah, I can't do anything but give him a lot of praise. But he's also shown that he's just not a guy that you can knock out. At some point, age is going to be a case where, yeah, it's going to happen. But, you know, the guy had no legs after the 6th round, and he had one arm after the 4th, and still couldn't get knocked out, still had the survival instinct. So, look, Derevianchenko, he's just unfortunate that he was in the same era as Canelo, Golovkin, and Danny Jacobs. And the Danny Jacobs fight probably came 1 or 2 fights too early in his career. I reckon if he had a couple more fights before then, the chances of him actually of winning a world title would have greatly increased. But yeah, ultimately, you can see the size difference. You can see that Derevianchenko's a much smaller man, and that he's, you know, a natural 160 pounder compared to Mbili. But credit to him, he showed that Mbili doesn't do great with movement. especially that lateral movement and that quick pendulum step laterals like left to right. Proved that he could take a shot. And Bailey also proved, though, that he can battle through adversity, because if we did see at the end, he did have a big ice pack over his left shoulder, and he had injured his shoulder at some point in the fight, probably throwing every single part of his body weight into a shot, which is something that he may need to look at moving forward. But yeah, both guys in there were pretty, sort of pretty injured, but both were very attritional. I do think, and I think the only reason that Derevianchenko was allowed to continue in that fight, especially past round 8, was because it was a 10-rounder and not a 12. If that was a 12-rounder, by the time they got to round 7 and they started to see some of the punishment he was taking, they would have been like, we can't give you another 5 rounds of this. And I reckon by the time when he said, show me something, I'm going to give you one more, which I think was at the end of the 8th going into the 9th round, even though I think they'd had conversations after the 8th. That fight would have been stopped 100% if it was a 12-rounder. It's only because they ended up getting to round 9 that I think that they just allowed him to sort of stay in there to kind of keep his pride. But I don't know if I can agree with that, because that was, even though he did well, he still took a hellacious beating, both to the body, and some very clean headshots. I don't know where he kind of goes from there, but the volume of Christian Mbile is an issue, at least for 4 rounds. But there's also that blueprint now that people have seen on a couple of occasions when he's gone past sort of 4 or 5 rounds, he started to flag and look very laboured because he's throwing everything into the shots. So ultimately, you get him in a 12-rounder, and you're able to last those first sort of 3-4. The rest of the fight is your fight to sort of take over. But that being said, Christian Mbile is a very fun fighter to watch. Every time he fights, I watch, even though, a lot of the time he's not facing great opposition, except for when he fought Carlos Gongora. I thought that was a really good fight. But yeah, in general, I'm interested to sort of see the progression. Eventually, he will get a title shot when the rest of the belts get fragmented, once Canelo decides to, go into retirement, or he's got the William Skull option. Skull's facing Fishkin, but I'm sure that he can either get the winner or maybe try to parlay himself into that position and into that situation. But yeah, overall, it was a fun night of boxing. It wasn't a patch on last week or the week before, but there were some good fights to be had and some nice moments to be made. So overall, no problems. It was fun. Any final thoughts, Tony, before we get out of here?
Never quick win for not quick win, but another quick mention, of another win for Jahai Tucker. 11-1-1. He now moves on to 12-1-1. Another name that we have mentioned in the past, so we look to see how he gets on in the future. I didn't see too much of that fight, so I can't comment too much about it. But yeah, no, I mean it's interesting. I have looked on BoxRec. The WBA does not appear to be back on there yet. So I'm not really sure what the hell's going on, because yesterday I was told that they were going to put it back on. So we'll just wait and see how that all pans out. As Space is done, my socials are now done below. Pugilistboy on X and YouTube. Pugilistboy, Pugilistic on Instagram.
And for me, ladies and gentlemen, BaseDaKID, the hardcore casual. Casual stream will be back tomorrow, 100%. It will be 7:30 sharp, because I do have to leave around 8:30, 20 to 9 to head off somewhere. So yeah, we will be doing that. More episodes and stuff throughout the rest of the video, throughout the rest of the week. BaseDaKID on Instagram and Threads, BaseDaKID.thc on TikTok and on Twitter. It's B_A_S_E, or just type in BaseDaKID, and I do think it is the first thing to show up. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for obviously being in attendance. We will be back next week, I believe. But yeah, until then, we will bid you a good night. So get some rest, catch up, and yeah, everyone, peace out.